Cool.
Hello, hello to all of our friends out there on the interwebs, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or LinkedIn, or maybe even catching the replay. Welcome to the next conversation that we're having this month in March, which is largely about creativity and expression and self care, not only for ourselves as the adults, but also for the teens and tweens in our lives. I'm Clarissa Constantine, founder of the ParenTween Connection, and I'm super excited to have Dr. Carla Caturia with us today. So, Dr. Carla, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I love bringing in folks like you who just have a wealth of experience to share with parents. So why don't we start there? Can you give us kind of the Reader's Digest condensed version of your background and why the topic that we're talking about today, supporting the overachieving or high achieving overachievers, whatever we want to call them,
Yes.
call us. Why is this so important to you?
So yeah, basically being the person I needed when I was a teen. I was an overachiever. Woke up one day after graduating from college, having a doctorate, being a teacher, assistant principal, college professor, and was like, what am I doing? And it wasn't that I didn't love teachers or kids or parents or teaching or assistant principaling. It was more of how can I affect more lives and affect them deeper? I'm doing a lot of paperwork. I'm doing a lot of this, that, and the other thing. I'm running all over the place, but am I really doing what my true purpose was meant to be? And so now I can really dig down and help teens, work on their limiting beliefs, lower their stress and anxiety, but still do all their activities, get their straight A's and, live a fulfilling life versus like, oh my God, I woke up at 30. I don't want to do this life anymore. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
I know as we were kind of talking before we actually went live, I was saying, the first part of our conversation here is supporting the stressed out overachiever, and I was like, wow, I don't know anybody like that. And I know that's one of the things that you and I had originally, when we first met, that we talked
Yes.
about, like, being the person that we needed. I was that stressed out overachiever. And I
Mm-hmm.
recognize that a lot of the pressure was internal, but frankly, a lot of it came from my mom too. And I know it's because she saw my potential. I know it's because she saw that she wanted, or she really wanted me to be the best that I could be, but it ended up kind of backfiring
Sure.
in some ways, landed me in a whole lot of therapy over the years. Thank God for therapists. But when I graduated, I was seventh in my class. And my mother's response to me was, well, that's great, but why weren't you first?
Mm.
Right. And so, like, again, a lot of it was external, but a lot of it was internal. I'm still the overachiever. Just ask any of my friends. But I like the fact that you wanted to start our conversation today, Dr. Carla, by talking about how the child's worth and maybe even like their identity, because those are so intertwined, right? Isn't defined by achievement, whether they're first in the class, seventh in the class, last in the class, they still graduated. So, where do we go from there? What's your perspective on that?
I mean, yeah. I have a lot of parents that they're in a certain community, there's competition, there's GPA, and it's important. You want to stress the importance of doing well in school, but at what cost is what it comes down to. And, if parents are chasing the dream of my kid's the best or, whatever they might not have achieved when they were younger, then them being achievers, them high achievers themselves, inadvertently put that pressure on their kids. So, and it really is hard for them, but it is necessary for them to take a step back and frankly let them fail. And that doesn't mean fail big, but can you let them, can you give them some autonomy in, let's say, sixth grade or eighth grade to, don't go to school and bring their lunch every day because they forgot it or their homework assignment. Let them deal with the consequence. And so that when they are a junior and a senior, you're not there trying to, save them from everything. And then they're not learning anything. So
Right.
it's hard for parents because frankly, like they're babies and then you have to take care of every minute, every second of them. And then to let that go is tough. It's tough, but it's
Absolutely.
necessary. Yeah.
So, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the point that you made of like, at what cost? Having
Yes.
been in the classroom yourself, having been in administration, you had a little bit more global perspective of what was going on in your school building. But then you
Mhm.
also saw, as a college professor, some of the longer term ramifications that came out of it. What
Yeah.
are some of the costs that you see? I mean, I clearly I know what the worst prognosis could be, but there's there's a lot of shades of gray, as it were, in between there. What are some of the negatives that you see coming up when kids are getting the message that their worth is based on their achievements?
Well, so something you said, made me think of a story. I was speaking with a mom, and so her daughter and 5 of her friends went off to college. After freshman year, only 3 of them continued, and they didn't necessarily drop out, but they had to come back to local college. And it's not a matter of whatever college works for your kid works, but they couldn't hack it. They couldn't, the pressure, the actually doing my own laundry, like they weren't prepared. So I know your question was a little bit different, but it really brought that to mind for me, because, it's really about the whole child. So are they emotionally prepared? That's the thing that I work on, is emotional intelligence. And that's the thing that they're lacking. Frankly, it's very difficult for schools to support that with the structure and the frameworks that are in place. So they might be sound academically. They're very smart. They know how to study all the things, but they can't handle anything beyond that. And so they might not there might not be something super detrimental. They're just coming from like living on campus to coming home, but still they're not, then they're questioning, what am I doing? How I can't do this. All these things are going through their head, and because they hadn't built up that emotional resiliency prior to leaving home. So that's a good point. Yeah.
And it also strikes me with that example that you mentioned with the phrase, they couldn't hack it. They don't have the logistical capacity. Right? They don't have the emotional capacity. They have got the academics down, but they don't have the logistical capacity. Like you're saying about, how do you run your own laundry? How do you plan your time to get your child to class on time when it's not like you just have to be there from 7:30 in the morning until 3:00 in the afternoon? How do you plan when you're going to do your homework and things in between? How do you navigate a part-time job if that's appropriate? And it makes me think of the phrase that some other professionals we've had with us over the years have said, like, you're not raising children, you're raising adults. And so when we look at like the entire adult life, like lifes sometimes, right? Like when life gets to lifing, how do we manage?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the mental health impacts that you've seen when kids can't life. Like, it's not just that they can't hack it, but like there's definitely things that come up for them about their own capacity, their belief in themselves, when we haven't prepared them on the emotional or the logistical, like the lifey life side of things.
Yeah. And it's a combination of like their self-belief, like you're saying, as well as their habits and routines. So on the surface, they seem like they've got it all together, but they are staying up till 2 a.m, getting up at whatever time, missing first period because they stayed up till 2 a.m. studying. So they don't have the habits and routines that are going to make, so then when you go to college and you can miss your 8:00 class, nobody's going to say anything to you. You're going to miss your 8:00 class, and it's going to continue. And then the emotional piece there of the self-belief, I didn't want to go to school because I looked like such and such a thing, or I didn't, gonna go because, and there, there's a lot of confidence issues in addition to having no routine, no habits in place. And then like you're saying, then you're going to college and you don't even know how to do basic functions, because on the other hand, your mom or whomever was doing a lot of these things for you up until the age of 17, 18, so a lot of when I was a college professor, I'm reading these papers and I'm like, this is not even as good as some of my freshmen and sophomore, but it's not because, those kids were sometimes lacking skills, but also like, it's very detrimental to their growth in their, early 20s. Both social, emotionally, and those habits and routines for sure.
And we're not even necessarily talking about the extra complexities that come along when we have a diagnosed neurodivergence. If it's, the executive functions that play in that are just that much more challenging to work around, especially if you have a neurotypical parent and a neurodivergent kiddo. It's just that much more challenging, I think, to understand why it's so important. So then I know the next thing you wanted to talk about was how to cultivate a safe emotional environment at home. And I think that's a logical next step to go to. I'm going to guess that part of it is you're going to be like, make your kid do his own laundry. Okay, that's step one. Like, that's not the only thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's
how do parents do that?
I mean, it's open communication, it's time spent with them, it's being vulnerable. And, so a lot of times, parents are just as busy. They're the ones modeling for their kids to work from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then they don't have time. And then everybody's fighting or rushing around and this and that and the other thing. So it's really, being able to cut out time in your day to actually spend with them, or weekly, if, depending upon what life is like, and just sitting and listening to them. And that's key too, because a lot of times, parents and kids get in this negative loop of kids do something wrong, the parents aren't happy, and then it's just this negative loop. And, we've lost our relationship. It doesn't mean we don't love each other. It doesn't mean they don't take care of one another and all those things, but it just becomes a conflict, and, it's a struggle. So it's how you have to like unwind that struggle and make that focus more on, let's go for a walk, let's grab an ice cream, whatever it is. Those small things that they seem like no-brainers. People have to prioritize those, so it's very important. It's very important to rebuild the relationship.
Right. Well, and I was thinking, you even see that in a marital partnership. That sometimes, God knows my husband and I have gotten there where we're just in a challenging period, whether it just, again, life gets to lifing, and one person starts getting a little snippy and the other person's snippy, and we have fully formed frontal lobes, right? And we still do it. So one of the things that you said was open communication. And I think that, like, from what I've seen in my experience, is a lot of parents feel like they're keeping open communication, and yet the kiddos, for whatever reasons, struggle to step into that. Can you give us some insight as to recommendations you offer to parents about how to back that up with action, as opposed to, like, one that I hear is, well, I tell my kids all the time, they can come talk to me about anything or everything. My mom said that to me too. And let me be clear, there were at least a handful of topics that I knew absolutely, unequivocally, without question, that I couldn't talk to her about. Now, whether she realized I felt that or not was a different conversation.
Yep.
But I don't think that my mom and I were alone in that experience.
No.
So
Nope.
what's your suggestion about
Well,
we're talking to parents here. What can parents do to facilitate that?
Well, I think parents think that they're listening to their teens, but are they really listening? So do they get in the car and lecture them as soon as they pick them up from school? Or do they say, hey, I hope you had a great day. Tell me one awesome thing that happened. Or just leave them alone. Say, hey, hope you had a great day, period. Give them, because just like when you get home from work, when they get home from school, they need to decompress. And it's just some simple things like that. But a lot of times, I was doing like a little survey with some of my kids about the love languages. And it's one of the questions is like, would you rather have your parents not lecture you, or I don't know, have them give you a hug or something like that? And it was not lecture me, so even though you always want to fix it, maybe they don't want it fixed. So if you really want to open communication with them, something I'll do with my kids or with whoever, it's say they open up and they say something. It's, do you want me to celebrate that? Do you want feedback? Or do you want me to give you advice, or nothing at all? Like, do you just want me to hear it? And it's like asking permission. And for parents, that's hard because they're like, I don't have to ask for permission. That's my kid. But it's a human being that has an emotion. They're feeling something at that point, good, bad, or otherwise, and ask them what they want. And if they don't want feedback right at that point, but you still want to give it, ask them in an hour. Hey, I have some advice for you on this situation. Are you ready to hear it? Period. So it depends on where they're at in their emotional state.
And I think the follow-up to that is that we have to be okay saying that if they say no, okay.
Yeah.
I will turn around and walk away and punch a pillow, but
and just like, I was talking with a girl the other day, and she's fighting with her brother, and she's like, my mom will yell at me. And then I was like, well, can you leave the situation? Well, sometimes she keeps yelling, and or maybe she wasn't even yelling, just being, telling her things that she did wrong. But sometimes you have to let the kid go and come back. And it's not easy because you really want you want to hammer home what happened and what went wrong. But frankly, like, they're not going to hear it. And it doesn't mean they're off the hook. It's just talk about it at a time when things are better, going better. And then people go, well, I don't want to talk about it when things are going better because things are going good. But that's the time you have to talk about it. So yeah.
It's a time that you at least have an opportunity or have a hope and a prayer that it's not going to escalate. It's when the emotions are at least a little bit more even keeled, coming back and going, hey, I wanted to revisit this. Can we do this calmly, because
Mm-hmm.
maybe they look calm, cool, and collected on the outside, but maybe they're stressing about something else that just hasn't bubbled up yet, and they're not really as calm as they look to us.
Yeah, and teaching the kids to say, like, instead of fighting back or placing blame or some, just teaching the kids to, say, hey, right now I'm feeling X right now. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry, and just setting that boundary with their parent. It doesn't mean they're being disrespectful. It just means like, I hear you and I can't handle it right now. So can we at X an hour from now discuss this, or tomorrow, sleep on it. So yeah, makes a difference, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And again, we as the adults, and I say that I'm right. Like, I'm life, I've done a lot of this, of being okay when they're like, no, I'm not ready to talk about it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna lose my mind if you say X, Y, or Z again, um,
Do you mind if I
and
just
giving
make,
them that flexibility.
oh, sorry. Well, because if you think about it, because back to high achievers, like they've already beaten themselves up about the B minus that they got, or you know what I mean? So they've already like, they come home with a terrible grade, let's just say it's like a D or something, it's like, maybe this is their hardest class. Maybe they gave, focus on the effort that they gave to study. I mean, if they bombed it and they didn't, and they went out and partied the night before, well, that's on them. But, frankly, like if they gave all the effort they could, well, it's about their effort. And then how can we together next time get you to a C or a B? But they've already beat themselves up. They don't need another person, giving it to
Right.
them as well.
Right. Well, and I
Yeah.
think that's a good opportunity to, I'm sure the name Carol Dweck means something to you in terms of, mindset, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Like, if we beat them up about a D, then it's going to reinforce the idea that we don't think that they can do any better potentially. Whereas if we look at it and go, okay, what were the circumstances that led up to this D? And what are some aspects that you think are within your power to adjust? The reality is we all make mistakes. We all fall short of our goals. Hello. I mean, that's life, right? But if we have the opportunity to go, okay, what could I do differently next time? Then that reinforces the idea, especially if we give them the opportunity to propose their ideas of what could be adjusted. That
Yeah.
not only helps them reflect on it, but it also signals to them our belief in them that they can do differently or adjust and make different decisions next time, which again,
Yeah.
that's life.
And frankly, like mistakes are really hard for high achievers because a lot of them are
Mhm.
perfectionists. They want it to be a certain way. And, I'm not condoning C's, but can you get it 70 or 80% of the way there? If you've done this presentation 20 times and it's 10 o'clock at night, it's time to shut it down. Like working another hour or 2 hours on it is just gonna, it's not going to help anymore. So when do you stop, and when do you realize, oops, I made a mistake, and guess what? I'm going to learn from that, but I'm not going to perseverate on it. And that's really tough with the perfectionist piece.
Well, and I think that also speaks to, again, to just life, is that our education system, I feel like in a lot of ways, with the grading system, I'll leave it there, sets our students up for failure, because nowhere else in life are we expected to have 99% hits. Even professional baseball players don't make contact with the ball 99% of the time. Like, if they're better than 50%, they're having a rock star year, and yet 50% is failing. And I mean, we're not going to necessarily get into that whole philosophy, but like,
I love that argument with the zero, but yeah.
right, exactly. No, for sure. But like, there's an aspect where like, we don't have to be at 85, 90% on everything every time in order to be successful humans.
Mm-hmm.
So to that point, I know one of the point that you wanted to wrap up with was modeling balance as the adult in the family. And
Mm-hmm.
how do we do that? The power, and then the power in modeling balance and being relatable. How do we be relatable, and how do we model this balance?
I mean, it's taking care of yourself. And a lot of moms especially aren't doing that. They're working, they're driving their kids everywhere, and they might be super successful, but they're overwhelmed, they're stressed. And then that's exactly what you're teaching your child. So it doesn't mean that you need to like sit back and meditate, 24/7, but can you as a family do certain things that are for fun or for relaxation, or play game, things that kind of don't matter. Like, yes, we're achieving, but like maybe everybody reads fiction books on Thursday night. I don't know, whatever works for your family. but with that being said, you have to also, you can't sit at the dinner table and say no phones and then take your phone out. So you, you really have to model that, and then, and then set your boundaries. So, they should see mom or dad, like, I don't know, outside working out or running or, whatever it is that's going to be able to have you take care of you. But if they just see you pulling your hair out all the time, that's just what they're going to do. Because they're going to, they watch you 100%, whether they have an attitude and they don't like you today, they're still watching you. And there's
for sure.
That.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So as we round out part one of our conversation, Dr. Carla, I know I've mentioned this to you, but pretty much everything that we do at ParenTween Connection is based on what I call the foundations of connection. And this came out of a conversation with myself at one point where I asked myself, why is it that your students, I mean, I've been in the SAT, ACT world for almost 30 years at this point. Why do they sometimes feel more comfortable talking to somebody like you or like me or somebody outside of the family unit rather than their own parents? Because parents are heartbroken when they realize their kids don't want to talk to them. And so I was like, what is it that sometimes we can offer to these kiddos that their parents aren't able to for whatever reason? And so I'm going to read the foundations, and I'd love to know when I'm done, which of these kind of like hits home most for you, or which one you would encourage parents to explore. So the first, and they're in the letters of connection or in order. So we have create a safe place. We have observe, non-judgment. Then we've got nod and smile, as in zip it, which we talked about earlier. Explore is the E. Then we have challenge your truths. Take your time. Innovate. Own your own story. And nurture. And I say to anybody who's listening, these are absolutely not linear. They aren't even circular. They're like the ball of yarn that the cat got to, because they're so commingled. And you think you make a little progress on one and you go to another, and then you're like back to the first one and you're like, I thought I had that down, and there's just another layer to explore. So I'm curious, which of those kind of just popped out at you?
Yeah, for me, it's non-judgment. I mean, and I have my parents are fantastic parents that I work with. So it's not, oh, I don't know how to parent and I'm saving them. It's, I know how to parent. I'm a great parent and I just can't get through to my kid, or we have a good relationship. We want to make it better. So it's definitely, non-judgment with me. I'm very easygoing, very, I don't know, a lot of parents will come, message me on social media. Oh, I want to work with you, but they're never going to meet with you, or they don't want therapy, or, and then I just like, let me just meet them. And then we meet, and it's just, I hate to say it, it's just like a vibe. It's, there's not
Totally,
it's very difficult to define. But I accept you as you are. I basically am like giving you love right here. Like, I just want to help you be better in whatever that looks like for you. And if they, and it might take them a few sessions, but if they can't feel that, then, they feel it. And it's in the way I position it with parents. It's not a replacement. It's nothing like that. It's just another arm, for lack of a better term. It's like, how many soccer or basketball or baseball teams do you see without a coach? None. So how many families do you see without a coach? A lot. And all families should have a coach. That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. So, Dr. Carla, for folks who are interested in having a coach and perhaps even vibing with you and wanting you as their coach, how do they find you and learn more about what you do and how you can support them?
Sure. So I'm definitely, Facebook is pretty much my main jam. I have a group there. It's just friend me, my name, Dr. Carla Caturia. You can friend me. I can send you the group. And I'm in Instagram as well. I have an Instagram as well as a YouTube channel with like over 100 videos. So there's a lot of my social media, and my YouTube is there for value. Just, hopefully you find some tip or some strategy that you can use. And yeah, so that's how I communicate with families. If they're interested in finding out more about exactly what I do and want to book a call, they can just do that, message me through social media. We can see where their family sits and, potentially work together.
Awesome. Cool, cool. All right. So I've mentioned a couple of times this is part one of our conversation. Part two of our conversation, we are actually heading over to ParenTween Village for that. And that's going to be 3 keys to a strong relationship. And ParenTween Village, if you're not familiar with it, is our family community. You can find out more at parentweenconnection.com/ParenTween Village. It is a membership. It starts as low as $17 a month for, again, a lot of exclusive videos, like you were saying, Dr. Carla, from a wealth of professionals. And so if you've got questions, feel free to pop over to the website. Again, it's parentweenconnection.com/ParenTween Village. And we will see you there. Dr. Carla, thanks so much for being with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.